The research ship Stellar Horizon moved slowly through space. Its metal hull gleamed under the light of distant stars. Inside the ship, 20 young alien students sat in rows of chairs. They came from different worlds across the galaxy. Professor Kexthala stood at the front of the room. She was a Zephyrian, which meant she looked like a giant insect. Her 4 arms moved as she talked. Her voice made clicking sounds that the translation machines turned into words the students could understand. "Today we will study the most dangerous creature in known space," she said. Her large black eyes looked at each student. "The Void Stalker. Lives on planet Zarian 7. No one has ever caught one. No one has ever tamed one. It is the perfect killer." The students shifted in their seats. Some looked scared. Others seemed excited. Zara was a Neptunian student. Her blue skin was wet, and she breathed through gills on her neck. She raised her webbed hand. "Professor, how big is the Void Stalker?" Professor Kexthala's mandibles clicked together. "Reports say it stands 12 feet tall. But size is not what makes it dangerous. The creature can walk through walls. It can become invisible. It feeds on the thoughts in your mind." A quartzite student named Vel dimmed his crystal body. The light inside him grew weaker when he felt afraid. "Has anyone ever fought one and lived?" "Very few," the professor answered. "Those who survived." "Describe a creature of pure nightmare. Black skin that eats light, 6 red eyes that see into your soul, claws that can cut through the strongest metals." The students whispered to each other in their own languages. The translation machines worked hard to keep up with all the different sounds. At the back of the room, a human sat quietly. His name was Jake Morrison. He wore a blue uniform that said Human Liaison Officer on the chest. He was reading something on a small screen and did not seem to pay attention to the lesson. Dr. Elena Rodriguez sat next to Jake. She was also human, but she wore a white coat that marked her as a scientist. She took notes while the professor talked. "The Void Stalker is why we study from a safe distance," Professor Kexthala continued. "Our ship has the best shields in the galaxy. We will observe the creature's hunting patterns from orbit." A Nebulan student floated near the ceiling. His body was made of gas that glowed purple. He spoke in a voice like wind through leaves. "Why do we need to study something so dangerous?" "Because," the professor clicked, "to understand the galaxy, we must understand its apex predators. Every world has dangerous creatures. But the Void Stalker is special. It sits at the top of the food chain. Nothing hunts it. Nothing scares it. Nothing makes it run away." Jake looked up from his screen. "Is that what the reports say?" Professor Kexthala turned to him. Her compound eyes reflected the room's lights. "Yes, Commander Morrison. Every single report says the same thing. The Void Stalker fears nothing." Jake nodded and went back to his reading. But Elena noticed he was no longer looking at maintenance. Reports. He was reading files about planet Xerion-7. The ship's speakers crackled to life. "Attention all passengers. We are now entering the Zarian system. Please prepare for orbital approach." The students pressed their faces to the windows. Planet Zarian 7 looked like a green and brown marble floating in space. Thick clouds covered most of the surface. Lightning flashed in the atmosphere. "The planet has a heavy gravity," Professor Kexthala explained. "The air is thick with spores from the jungle plants. The trees grow very tall and block out most of the sunlight. It is the perfect home for a creature that hunts in darkness." Zara's gills fluttered with nervousness. "Will we really go down to the surface?" "We will make a brief visit to set up observation equipment," the professor said. "The landing party will be small. Only essential personnel will go down." Jake stood up and walked to the front of the room. "I'll need to go with the landing party. Standard protocol for dangerous worlds." Some of the students looked surprised. Humans were still new to the galaxy. Most alien species thought of them as weak and fragile. A Zephyrian student named Click raised his hand. "No offense, Commander Morrison, but wouldn't it be safer to leave the humans on the ship? You don't have natural armor or weapons." Jake smiled. "I appreciate the concern, but I have my orders. Besides, someone needs to make sure the students stay safe." Dr. Rodriguez closed her notebook. "I'll also need to go. This is the first time anyone has studied the Void Stalker up close. We can't miss this chance." Professor Kexthala's mandibles clicked in what might have been worry. "Very well. But we follow strict safety rules. No one goes more than 50 meters from the landing pod. No one makes loud noises. And if we see the creature, we retreat immediately." The ship settled into orbit around the planet. Through the windows, the students could see the thick jungle canopy below. Somewhere in those dark forests, the galaxy's most feared predator waited. "Tomorrow, we make history," Professor Kexthala announced. "We will observe the Void Stalker in its natural habitat. But remember, we are not hunters. We are students. Our job is to learn and survive." Jake looked out at the planet below. His face showed no fear, only quiet interest. Elena noticed his calm expression and wondered what he was thinking. The students spent the rest of the day preparing equipment and studying safety procedures. They checked their protective suits and tested their communication devices. Everyone seemed nervous except for the two humans. As night fell on the ship, the students tried to sleep, but many stayed awake, thinking about what they would see tomorrow. In the darkness of space, planet Zerion 7 continued its slow rotation, hiding secrets in its jungle depths. The Void Stalker was down there somewhere, waiting in the shadows. Soon, it would meet visitors from the stars, and one of those visitors would surprise everyone with what happened next. The landing pod cut through the thick atmosphere of planet Zerion 7. Inside, 6 beings sat strapped to their seats. Professor Kexthala checked the instruments with her 4 hands. Jake Morrison sat calmly, looking out the small window. "Doctor." Elena Rodriguez held a bag full of scientific equipment. 3 students had been chosen for the landing party. Zara the Neptunian kept her gills moist with a special breathing mask. Vel the Quartzite glowed softly in the dim light of the pod. Click the Zephyrian clicked his mandibles nervously. "Landing in 30 seconds, the pilot announced through the speakers. The pod shook as it broke through the last layer of clouds. Jake looked down at the jungle below. The trees were huge, some reaching 500 feet into the sky. Their leaves were dark green and purple. Strange plants glowed with soft light between the massive trunks. The pod touched down in a small clearing. Steam rose from the ground, where the hot metal met the wet soil. The door opened with a hiss. "Remember the rules," Professor Kexthala said. "Stay close to the pod. Make no sudden movements. Keep your voices low." They stepped out into the alien jungle. The air was thick and warm. It smelled like flowers and decay. Tiny lights floated through the air like living stars. The students learned these were spores from the jungle plants. Elena pulled out her equipment and started taking readings. "The atmosphere is safe to breathe," she said, "but there are high levels of electromagnetic activity. It might affect our equipment." The jungle was full of sounds. Strange birds called from the treetops. Insects buzzed in the undergrowth. Somewhere in the distance, a large animal made a deep roaring sound. "Is that the Void Stalker?" Zara whispered. "No," Professor Kexthala replied. "That is probably a tree bear. They are big, but not dangerous if we leave them alone." The group set up their observation equipment in a circle around the pod. Jake helped carry the heavy sensors while keeping watch on the surrounding jungle. His movements were quiet and careful, Vel's crystal body suddenly dimmed. "Something is watching us," he said. Everyone froze. Professor Kexthala's compound eyes scanned the tree line. Elena stopped working and slowly reached for her emergency beacon. "Where?" Jake asked quietly. "I don't know," Vel whispered. "But I can feel it. Something with a very strong mind." The jungle sounds began to fade. The buzzing insects went quiet. The bird calls stopped. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. "This is not good," Click said. His wings twitched with the urge to fly away. A shadow passed overhead, but there were no clouds in the sky above the clearing. The shadow was too big and moved too slowly to be any normal creature. The temperature dropped 10 degrees in seconds. The glowing spores in the air began to fall like snow. The students huddled closer together. "Get ready to run," Professor Kexthala whispered Dot. Then they saw it. The Void Stalker stepped out of what looked like solid rock. One moment, the jungle wall was empty. The next moment, a creature of nightmares stood there watching them. Dot. It was exactly as the reports described, but somehow worse. 12 feet tall with skin so black, it seemed to absorb light. 6 red eyes arranged in 2 rows across its face. Each eye was the size of a dinner plate and glowed like hot coals. The creature's body shifted between solid and transparent. Jake could see the trees behind it, but he could also see the powerful muscles moving under its skin. It had 4 arms, each ending in claws that looked like they could cut through metal. Zara made a small sound of terror. Her blue skin turned pale. Vel's crystal body dimmed until he was almost invisible. Click's wings buzzed so fast they blurred. Professor Kexthala tried to speak, but only clicking sounds came out. Her translation device had stopped working. The Void Stalker took a step forward. Its claws left deep marks in the hard ground. It moved without making any sound, like a ghost walking through the world. Helena grabbed Jake's arm. "We need to get back to the pod," she whispered, but Jake didn't move. He stood perfectly still, looking directly at the creature. The Void Stalker's 6 eyes focused on him. "Jake," Elena said more urgently, "we have to go, now." The creature took another step forward. It was now only 20 feet away. This close, they could see that its skin moved like liquid shadow. Its claws were longer than a human hand and sharp as razors. The students wanted to run, but their legs wouldn't move. Fear had frozen them in place. This was the galaxy's perfect predator, and they were about to become its prey. Jake slowly raised his hand. Professor Kexthala's eyes went wide with horror. Was the human going to try to fight the creature? That would be suicide. But Jake didn't make a fist. He held his hand up with the palm facing the Void Stalker. It was not a threatening gesture. It was the universal sign for stop. The creature paused. Its head tilted slightly to one side. The 6 red eyes studied Jake with new interest. "Easy," Jake said in a calm voice. "Nobody wants any trouble here." The Void Stalker's form became more solid. It was no longer transparent. The creature was focusing all its attention on the human standing in front of it. "Elena," Jake said without turning around, "take the students back to the pod. Slowly. Don't run." "I'm not leaving you," Elena replied. "Yes, you are," Jake said. His voice was still calm, but there was iron in it now. "Get them safe. That's an order." The Void Stalker moved closer. Now it was only 10 feet away. Jake could see his reflection in its glowing eyes. The creature's breathing sounded like wind. Through a cave, Professor Kexthala found her voice. "Commander Morrison, please step away from the creature. We can escape while it focuses on you." "No," Jake said. "If I move wrong, it will hunt all of us. This is better." The creature raised one of its 4 arms. The claws gleamed in the strange light of the jungle. It looked like it was getting ready to strike. Jake looked directly into the Void Stalker's eyes. Man and monster stared at each other across the small space between them. The air crackled with tension. Then something impossible happened. The Void Stalker took a step backward. The students couldn't believe what they were seeing. The galaxy's apex predator was backing away from a human. A human who had no weapons, no armor, and no special powers. Jake nodded slightly. "That's right," he said. "Nobody needs to get hurt here." The creature took another step back. And another. Its form began to fade, becoming transparent again. "Jake," Elena whispered. "What are you doing?" "Just talking," Jake replied. "Sometimes that's all you need to do." The Void Stalker gave Jake one last long look. Then it turned and walked back toward the trees. Its form became more and more transparent until it disappeared completely into the jungle wall. The normal sounds of the forest slowly returned. Birds began to call again. Insects resumed their buzzing. The floating spores rose back into the air. Students stood in shocked silence. They had just witnessed something that should have been impossible. The galaxy's most dangerous predator had retreated from a human without a fight. How? Professor Kexthala asked. Her voice was barely a whisper. Jake turned around and walked back to the group. His face showed no fear, no excitement, just quiet satisfaction. "We should get back to the ship," he said. The creature might return with friends, but nobody moved. They all stared at Jake Morrison, the human who had faced down the Void Stalker, and lived to tell about it. Questions filled their minds. How had he done it? What made the creature retreat? What did this mean for everything they thought they knew about predators and prey? Jake picked up Elena's equipment bag and started walking toward the pod. "Come on," he said. "We've got a report to write." The others followed him, their minds racing with questions that would change everything they thought they knew about humans and their place in the galaxy. The landing pod lifted off from planet Zarian 7 in silence. Inside, 6 beings sat with their thoughts spinning. What they had seen down there changed everything they believed about the galaxy. Professor Kexthala stared at Jake Morrison. The human sat calmly in his seat, reading reports on his screen like nothing had happened. His hands were steady. His breathing was normal. He looked like someone who had just finished a routine job. "Commander Morrison," the professor said finally, "we need to discuss what occurred on the surface." Jake looked up from his screen. "What would you like to discuss?" "You made the Void Stalker retreat," Zara said. Her voice was full of wonder. "The galaxy's apex predator backed down from you." "It seemed like the smart thing to do," Jake replied. "Fighting would have been dangerous for everyone." Vel's crystal body pulsed with confused light. "But how did you know it would retreat?" "Every report says the Void Stalker has never backed down from anything." Jake shrugged. "Maybe the reports were wrong." "No," Professor Kexthala said firmly. "I have read every study about these creatures. They are perfect predators. They do not show fear. They do not retreat. They hunt and kill everything they encounter." "Well," Jake said, "it retreated today?" Dr. Elena Rodriguez leaned forward. "Jake, what you did back there was incredible. But it was also completely against protocol. You're supposed to avoid apex predators, not stare them down." "I know the protocols," Jake said. "But sometimes you have to adapt to the situation." Clicks. Wings buzzed with frustration. "You're not explaining anything. What did you do? What power do humans have that the rest of us don't?" "No power," Jake answered. "I just looked at it." The students exchanged glances. This answer made no sense. You couldn't make the galaxy's most dangerous creature retreat just by looking at it. There has to be more, Zara insisted. "Do humans have some kind of psychic ability? Can you project fear into other minds?" Jake laughed. "No, nothing like that. Humans are pretty ordinary compared to most species. Ordinary? Vel's light flickered. You faced down a void stalker. There is nothing ordinary about that. Elena pulled out her notes from the encounter. Let me review what happened. The creature appeared and approached us. Everyone was terrified and frozen. Then Jake stepped forward and made eye contact. Eye contact, Professor Kexthala repeated. Is that significant in human culture? It can be, Jake said, but not in the way you're thinking. Then explain it to us, Click demanded. What happened in that moment when you looked at the creature? Jake was quiet for a long moment. He seemed to be choosing his words carefully. I looked at it, and it looked at me. We understood each other. Understood what? Zara asked. That fighting wasn't necessary. Professor Kexthala's mandibles clicked in annoyance. Commander Morrison, you are being deliberately vague. This is a scientific expedition. We need data, not mysterious statements. The pod docked with the main ship. Jake stood up and gathered his equipment. I'll write a full report for the science team. You'll have all the data you need. But as they walked through the ship's corridors, Jake knew his report wouldn't satisfy anyone. How could he explain something he didn't fully understand himself? The other students were waiting in the main classroom. They crowded around the landing. Party, asking excited questions. Did you see it? A Nebulan student asked. Did you really encounter the Void Stalker? We saw it, Vel said. His crystal body was still dim from the experience. But what we saw doesn't match anything in the textbooks. Word of the encounter spread quickly through the ship. Soon, everyone was talking about how a human had made the galaxy's apex predator. Retreat. The story grew with each telling dot in the ship's dining hall. Students gathered around Jake's table. They watched him eat his simple meal and wondered what made him different from everyone else. Commander Morrison, a young Zephyrian asked, is it true that humans evolved from predators? No, Jake said. We evolved from prey animals, just like most intelligent species. Then how did you know what to do? The student pressed dot Jake took, a bite of his food, and thought about the question. I guess I didn't know. I just did what felt right. Alina sat down next to him. Jake, the students deserve a better explanation. What you did today was remarkable. It could change how we understand interspecies relationships. Maybe, Jake said, but I'm not sure I can explain it in a way that makes sense. Try. Elena urged. Jake looked around the dining hall. Students from a dozen different species watched him with curious eyes. Each species had evolved differently. The Zephyrians had natural armor and could fly. The Neptunians could breathe underwater and had incredible strength. The Quartzites could absorb energy and heal quickly. Every species in this room has something special, Jake said. Natural advantages that help them survive on their home worlds. The students nodded. This was basic evolutionary science. Humans don't have any of those advantages, Jake continued. We're not the strongest or the fastest. We can't fly or breathe underwater. We don't have armor or claws or telepathy. Then what do you have? Zara asked. Jake smiled. We have persistence. When something scares us, we don't always run away. Sometimes we keep going anyway. But the Void Stalker wasn't scared of you, Click protested. It was scared of something else. Maybe, Jake said. Or maybe it just recognized something familiar. Professor Kexthala had been listening from across the room. She approached Jake's table with her datapad in hand. Commander Morrison, I have been reviewing the encounter footage from our suit cameras. The creature's behavior was indeed unusual. But your behavior was even more unusual. How so? Jake asked. You showed no fear response. Your heart rate remained steady. Your breathing never changed. Most remarkably, you made direct eye contact with a creature that other species instinctively avoid looking at. I noticed that. too, Elena added. The rest of us couldn't even look directly at it for more than a second. But you stared right at it. Jake nodded. It seemed important to let it know I wasn't going to look away. Why? Vel asked. What message were you trying to send? Jake finished his meal and stood up. I was telling it that I wasn't going to run. That if it wanted a fight, it would have to go through me first. But that's suicide, Click said. The creature could have killed you easily. Maybe, Jake said. But it would have had to work for it. And I think it decided that wasn't worth the trouble. The students watched Jake walk away. His explanation raised more questions than it answered. How could showing determination make an apex predator retreat? What was it about human persistence that other species found so unsettling? Elena caught up with Jake in the corridor. There's more to this story, isn't there? Jake stopped walking and looked at her. Elena, what do you know about human history? Some. Your species had a lot of wars. You survived several extinction events. You spread across your planet despite having no natural advantages. Right, Jake said. And how do you think we did? That? Elena thought about it. I'm not sure. Most species expand by adapting to new environments. But humans seem to adapt their environments to fit them. We didn't adapt, Jake said. We just refused to give up when other species would have. Stopped trying, we kept going. When obstacles seemed impossible, we found a way around them. And you think the Void Stalker sensed that somehow? Jake shrugged. Maybe. Or maybe it just looked at me and saw something that reminded it of itself. What do you mean? Think about it, Jake said. The Void Stalker is an apex predator because it never gives up. It hunts its prey until it catches them. It doesn't know how to quit. Elena's eyes widened with understanding, and when it looked at you, it saw the same quality. Two things that don't know how to quit, Jake said, meeting each other in the middle of a jungle. Maybe it decided that particular hunt wasn't worth the cost. That night, the students lay in their beds, thinking about what they had learned. The galaxy suddenly seemed like a more complicated place. Predators and prey weren't simple categories anymore. Somewhere in the ship, Jake Morrison wrote his report. But he knew the real story couldn't be captured in words. Some things could only be understood by looking into the eyes of something that refused to blink first. The Void Stalker was still down there on planet Zerion 7, probably wondering about the strange creature that had looked back at it without fear. And perhaps, for the first time in its life, the galaxy's apex predator had learned what it felt like to be uncertain. The next morning, Jake Morrison woke up to find 20 alien students waiting outside his quarters. They had been there for hours, talking in whispers and working up the courage to knock on his door. Commander Morrison, Professor Kexthala said. When he opened the door, "We need to talk," Jake sighed. He had hoped the excitement would die down overnight, but the students looked more curious than ever. "What can I do for you?" "We stayed up all night discussing what happened," Zara said. Her blue skin was darker than usual, which meant she was troubled. "Nothing about your encounter makes sense." "We reviewed every piece of data," Vel added. His crystal body pulsed with frustrated light. "The creature's behavior violates everything we know about apex predators." Jake looked at the group of young faces staring at him. They reminded him of his younger sister when she was trying to solve a puzzle, determined and frustrated at the same time. "Have you eaten breakfast?" he asked. The students shook their heads. Then, "Let's go to the dining hall. I think better when I'm eating." They formed a strange parade through the ship's corridors. Jake walked in front, followed by 20 alien students who whispered theories to each other. Other crew members stopped to stare at the unusual procession dot in the dining hall. Jake sat at a large table with his simple breakfast. The students arranged themselves in a circle around him, like he was giving a lecture. "Ask your questions," Jake said between bites. Professor Kexthala pulled out her datapad. First question. Have humans encountered void stalkers before? Not. That I know of, Jake replied. Second question. Do humans have any natural resistance to psychic attacks? No. We're not even sure psychic attacks exist. Click's wings buzzed impatiently. Third question. Are you trained in some kind of special combat technique? Jake laughed. I spent 6 weeks in basic training. I know how to use a plasma rifle and how to march in formation. That's about it. The students exchanged frustrated looks. Every answer made the mystery deeper. Fourth question, Zara said. What were you thinking when you faced the creature? Jake paused with his fork halfway to his mouth. This was the question he had been dreading. I was thinking about my job. Your job? Vel asked. I'm supposed to keep everyone safe. That's what liaison officers do. We make sure humans and aliens can work together without anyone getting hurt. But you put yourself in danger, Professor. Kexthala pointed out. That's the opposite of safe. Sometimes keeping everyone safe means taking risks, Jake said. If I had run away, the creature might have hunted all of us. By staying, I gave you time to escape. But you didn't escape. Click said. You just stood there, Jake nodded. That's right. Why? Jake finished his breakfast and pushed the plate away. Because running away wasn't going to solve the problem. A young Nebulan student drifted closer. But you could have died. Maybe, Jake said. But probably not. How could you know that? Zara demanded. Jake looked around the table. How many of you have pets? Several students raised their hands or made the equivalent gesture for their species. What happens when your pet gets scared? Jake asked. It runs. Away or hides, Vel said. What happens when your pet gets angry? It attacks, Click replied. And what happens when your pet is curious? It comes closer to investigate, Zara said. Jake nodded. The void stalker was curious about me. If it had been angry, it would have attacked immediately. If it had been scared, it would have disappeared. But it stayed and watched me. So you gambled your life on the creature being curious? Professor. Kexthala's voice was shocked. I made an educated guess, Jake said. The creature had never seen a human before. We were something new and interesting. That's insane, Click said. You could have been wrong. I could have been, Jake agreed, but I wasn't. Elena Rodriguez joined the group. She had been working in the lab all night, analyzing the data from their encounter. Jake, I've been studying the footage frame by frame. The creature's body language was unlike anything in our databases. What did you find? Professor Kexthala asked. The void stalker wasn't in hunting mode, Elena said. Its posture was more like ... assessment. It was trying to figure out what Jake was. And what conclusion did it reach? Zara asked. Elena looked at Jake. That's what I want to know. Jake stood up from the table. I think it decided I wasn't prey. Then what did it think you were? Vel asked. I'm not sure, Jake said. But I think it recognized something familiar. What could a human have in common with a void stalker? Click demanded. Jake walked to the dining hall's main window. Outside, the stars stretched endlessly in all directions. Dr. Rodriguez, what do you know about human evolution? Elena joined. Him at the window. Humans evolved as persistence hunters. You chased prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. You didn't give up until you caught what you were hunting. Right, Jake said. And what makes a good persistence hunter? Determination, Elena said slowly. The ability to keep going when everything tells you to stop. And what makes a good apex predator? The same thing, Elena realized. Never giving up. Always pursuing your prey. The students were quiet as they processed this idea. Jake turned back to face them. The void stalker and I had something in common, he said. Neither of us knows how to quit. When it looked at me, It saw something that reminded it of itself. But you're not a predator, Zara protested. No, Jake agreed. But I am persistent, and sometimes that's the same thing. Professor Kexthala's mandibles clicked rapidly. Are you saying the creature respected you? I'm saying it recognized me, Jake said, and it decided that hunting me would be more trouble than it was worth. Because you wouldn't give up? Val asked. Because I wouldn't run away, Jake corrected. Even if it killed me, I was going to make it work for the victory. The students sat in silence, trying to understand what they had learned. The galaxy's apex predator had backed down from a human, not because the human was stronger, but because the human was too stubborn to be easy prey. This changes everything, Elena said quietly. If humans can intimidate apex predators through sheer determination, what does that mean for our place in the galactic community? Jake shrugged. It means we bring something different to the table. Every species has evolved different survival strategies. Maybe ours is just refusing to give up. But that's terrifying, Click said. A species that never quits could be incredibly dangerous. Or incredibly useful, Jake replied. Depends on what we're not quitting about. The ship's communication system activated. All senior staff to the bridge immediately. We have received a priority message from Galactic Command. Jake headed for the door. Looks like our report got some attention. As he walked away, the students remained at the table, discussing what they had learned. The human race suddenly seemed much more interesting and much more frightening than they had realized. Elena followed Jake toward the bridge. There's something else, isn't there? Something you're not telling them. Jake paused at the elevator. Elena, how many apex predators has humanity encountered since we joined the galactic community? I don't know, she said. A few dozen maybe? Try again, Jake said as the elevator doors closed. Elena thought about it. Then her eyes widened as she realized what Jake was implying. How many? That's what the message from Galactic Command is probably about, Jake said. And that's what's going to change everything. The elevator carried them toward the bridge and toward answers that would reshape how the galaxy viewed the human race. Behind them, the alien students continued their discussion, unaware that their questions were about to be answered in ways they never expected. The stars outside the ship continued their eternal dance, indifferent to the small drama playing out among the creatures who traveled between them. But for the first time in galactic history, one species had shown that sometimes the greatest strength wasn't in claws or armor or speed. Sometimes the greatest strength was simply refusing to back down. The bridge of the stellar horizon was crowded when Jake and Elena arrived. Captain Myra Santos stood at the main screen, reading a message that made her frown. Professor Kexthala was already there with several other senior staff members. Ah, Commander Morrison, the captain said. Perfect timing. We just received some interesting information from Galactic Command. Jake looked at the message on the screen. It was marked with the highest security classification. What does it say? It says that your encounter with the Void Stalker is not the first time something like this has happened, Captain Santos replied. In fact, it's the 17th time. Elena's mouth fell open. 17th? Professor Kexthala's compound eyes reflected confusion. I don't understand. There are no records of successful encounters with Void Stalkers. That's because the encounters weren't with Void Stalkers, the captain said. They were with other apex predators. Different creatures, different worlds, but the same result every time. Jake nodded slowly. They all backed down from humans. Every single one, Captain Santos confirmed. Shadow Panthers on Kepler 9. Crystal Devourers on Titan Station. Death Wasps in the Andromeda sector. Whenever humans encountered apex predators, the creatures retreated. That's impossible, Professor Kexthala said. Apex predators don't retreat. It goes against their nature. Elena pulled up a chair and sat down heavily. Jake, did you know about this? I suspected, Jake admitted. There were rumors in the human fleet. Stories about encounters that didn't go the way they should have. And you didn't think to mention this? Elena asked. I thought they were just stories, Jake said. Besides, we needed to see if it would happen again. Captain Santos continued reading from the message. According to this report, Galactic Command has been quietly studying these incidents for the past 2 years. They've sent teams of scientists to investigate each encounter. What did they find? Professor Kexthela asked. That humans have a unique effect on apex predators across the galaxy, the captain said. Something about human behavior makes these creatures reconsider their hunting strategies. Jake looked out at the stars through the bridge windows. It's not just about being stubborn, is it? No, Captain Santos said. According to the report, it's about something much more fundamental. She touched a control, and the main screen changed to show a presentation prepared by Galactic Command's best scientists. This is Dr. Yellen from the Galactic Institute of Xenobiology, the captain said as an alien figure appeared on screen. Dr. Yellen looked like a tall, thin tree with eyes. The recorded message began to play. After extensive study, we have reached a remarkable conclusion about human-predator interactions. Humans represent something unique in the galaxy's evolutionary history. The screen showed images of different worlds and the apex predators that lived on them. Each creature was perfectly adapted to its environment and had no natural enemies. Every apex predator evolves to be the ultimate hunter on its world, Dr. Yellen continued. They develop the perfect combination of strength, speed, stealth, and intelligence. They have no fear because nothing can threaten them. Professor Kexthela leaned forward. This is basic predator ecology. But humans evolved differently, Dr. Yellen said. They did not become apex predators through superior physical abilities. Instead, they became apex predators through superior mental persistence. The screen showed images of early humans hunting. Massive animals across the plains of Earth. The humans were smaller and weaker than their prey, but they never stopped chasing. Humans are persistence hunters, Dr. Yellen explained. They evolved to outlast their prey through sheer determination. They would chase animals for days until the animals collapsed from exhaustion. Elena watched the images with growing understanding. We weren't the strongest predators on Earth. We were the most stubborn. Exactly, Jake said. We won by refusing to give up. Dr. Yellen's presentation continued. What makes this remarkable is that persistence hunting requires a specific psychological trait that most species never develop. The ability to continue pursuing a goal despite pain, exhaustion, fear, and the apparent impossibility of success. The screen showed brain scans comparing human minds to other species. The human brain lit up differently in areas associated with determination and goal pursuit. Humans have evolved to ignore normal survival instincts when pursuing a target, Dr. Yellen said. They will continue hunting even when logic suggests they should give up. This makes them psychologically unique in the galaxy. Captain Santos paused the recording. Do you see where this is going? Professor Kexthela's mandibles clicked rapidly. When apex predators encounter humans, they are meeting something they have never seen before. A creature that won't give up, Elena added, even when facing certain death. Jake nodded. And that scares them more than claws or armor ever could. The recording resumed. Our research suggests that apex predators recognize this trait instinctively. They understand that hunting a human would not be a normal hunt. It would be a war of attrition that could last indefinitely. The screen showed footage from several human-predator encounters. In each case, the pattern was the same. The predator would approach aggressively, make eye contact with the human, and then retreat. The predators are making a cost-benefit analysis, Dr. Yellen explained. Yes, they could probably kill the human eventually. But the human would not run away, would not give up, and would not stop fighting until the very end. The predator would be injured, exhausted, and vulnerable to other threats. So they decide the hunt isn't worth it, Elena said. More than that, Jake said. They decide we're not normal prey. We're something else entirely. Dr. Yellen's final words were sobering. Humans represent a new category in galactic ecology. They are not apex predators in the traditional sense, but they have achieved a similar position through psychological evolution rather than physical evolution. They are persistence apex predators. The recording ended, leaving the bridge in silence. Everyone was processing what they had learned. This explains everything, Professor Kexthela said finally. The Void Stalker retreated because it recognized something it had never encountered before. A species that refuses to be prey. Captain Santos brought up another document. There's more. Galactic Command wants to establish a new protocol for human involvement in dangerous missions. They're calling it the Morrison Protocol. Jake looked surprised. They're naming it after me? After what you did yesterday? Yes, the captain said. They want to study how human persistence can be used to protect other species from apex predators. Elena shook her head in amazement. A few days ago, most aliens thought humans were weak and fragile. Now they want us to be their bodyguards. Against the galaxy's most dangerous creatures. It makes sense, Jake said. We're not stronger or faster than apex predators. But we're the only species that can look them in the eye and make them blink first. Professor Kexthela turned to Jake. Commander Morrison, I owe you an apology. When I first met you, I thought humans were just another weak species that needed protection. I was wrong. You weren't completely wrong, Jake said. We are fragile. Compared to most species. We just don't let that stop us. The communication system activated again. Captain Santos, please report to the observation deck. The students are requesting a meeting with Commander Morrison. Jake sighed. I suppose. They have more questions. Probably, Elena said. But now we have better answers. They made their way to the observation deck, where the 20 alien students waited with excited expressions. Word of the Galactic Command message had spread through the ship. Commander Morrison, Zara said as soon as he arrived. Is it true? Have humans really faced down 17 apex predators? It's true, Jake said, though most of us didn't know it at the time. Vel's crystal body pulsed with bright light. This changes everything we thought we knew about predator hierarchies. It changes everything we thought we knew about humans. Click added. Professor Kexthela joined the group. Students, what we have learned today is that evolution takes many forms. Physical evolution gave us armor and claws and speed. But psychological evolution gave humans something equally powerful. The refusal to give up, Zara said. Exactly, Jake said. Every species has survival strategies. Ours just happens to be stubbornness. A young Nebulan student drifted closer. Commander Morrison, what happens now? How do humans fit into the galactic community? Jake looked out at the stars through the observation deck's large windows. I guess we'll figure it out as we go. That's what humans do. We keep trying until we find a solution. And if there is no solution? Val asked. Jake smiled. Then we keep trying anyway. That's the point. Elena joined the group with a datapad full of notes. I've been thinking about the implications of all this. If humans can intimidate apex predators, what does that mean for our relationships with other species? It means we have a responsibility, Jake said. Other species evolved to be strong or fast or smart. We evolved to be persistent. That's a powerful tool, and we need to use it wisely. Professor Kexthela nodded approvingly. Wisdom and persistence together. That could be a formidable combination. Or a terrifying one, Click said quietly. Jake turned to look at the young Zephyrian. Why terrifying? Because, Click said, if humans never give up, what happens when they want something they possess?